It was a quiet Saturday morning when everything began to unravel. I had just brewed a pot of coffee, the aroma filling the air as the sunlight poured through the kitchen window. Jolene walked in, her hair still a little messy from sleep, wearing that oversized college sweatshirt she always loved. She smiled at me, but something about it felt off. Not the kind of off that you'd notice if you weren't paying attention, but I caught it. After 7 years of marriage, you learn to read the small cracks in someone's armor. Conrad, what do you think about couples spending time apart once in a while? She asked casually, as though she were talking about trying a new recipe or rearranging the living room furniture. I raised an eyebrow. What do you mean? Like a weekend with your friends or something? She chuckled softly, but even that laugh felt rehearsed. No, more like having our own adventures. Just harmless fun, something to keep things interesting. Something in my chest tightened. Jolene had always been a free spirit, but this felt different. I pushed the thought aside and sipped my coffee, trying to play it cool. I guess it depends on what you mean by adventures. She waved her hand dismissively, her wedding ring catching the light. Nothing crazy, just like maybe a dinner with a coworker or hanging out with an old friend. It's good to keep things fresh, right? Her words hung in the air longer than they should have. I nodded, forcing a smile, but a small voice in the back of my mind whispered that this wasn't just about keeping things fresh. The week after that conversation felt like walking through a fog. Jolene seemed unusually distracted, checking her phone more often, disappearing into the other room to take calls, and staying late at work more frequently than usual. I told myself I was overthinking it. She'd never given me a reason to doubt her before. Then came the night she said she was going to dinner with a coworker named Neil. The name didn't ring a bell, and when I asked about him, she said he was just a guy from marketing, and not even that interesting. She laughed, kissed me on the cheek, and promised she'd be home by 9 o'clock. I wanted to believe her. I needed to believe her. But the knot in my stomach told me otherwise. By the time 9 o'clock rolled around, she still wasn't home. I called her, no answer. Texted, no reply. At 10:30, she finally walked through the door, her cheeks flushed and her smile brighter than usual. Sorry, Neil wouldn't stop talking, she said, kicking off her shoes. Something about the way she said his name made my blood run cold. I didn't press her that night. I didn't want to come across as insecure or paranoid, even though every fiber of my being was screaming that something wasn't right. But the moment she turned away from me, I made a silent decision. I wasn't going to ignore this feeling anymore. If she thought I wasn't paying attention, she was wrong. What Jolene didn't know was that this time, I was watching. And I wasn't going to let her get away with whatever she was hiding. The following morning, Jolene was back to her usual self, cheerful, making small talk about plans for the weekend. She even asked if I wanted her to pick up some steaks for the grill, but I couldn't shake the feeling from the night before. Every word she said felt like a thin layer of paint covering something much darker underneath. I decided to play it cool, not letting her see the doubt that was slowly consuming me. Instead, I leaned into her affection, even complimented her new haircut she'd gotten earlier in the week. I needed her to believe I wasn't suspicious because I had a plan, and it required her to let her guard down. The first step, checking her phone. I know it sounds awful. I never thought I'd be the guy to snoop, but something about the way she'd been glued to it lately didn't sit right with me. So, while she was out running errands that afternoon, I took my chance. Her phone was charging on the kitchen counter, locked. But here's the thing. After 7 years of marriage, you pick up on little details, like the fact that her passcode was the date we got married, 0314. My hands trembled as I typed it in, half expecting it to deny me access. It didn't. Her messages were clean. Too clean. The conversations with Neil were brief and professional, but something about the way she described our life felt off. Just the usual, nothing exciting here, one of her texts read. Another, ha ha ha, no, he doesn't notice anything. He's pretty laid back. That one hit me like a punch to the gut. Was she talking about me? What exactly didn't I notice? I scrolled up, my eyes scanning every word like I was piecing together a puzzle. And then I found it. A message from Neil, buried under several others. Last night was amazing. Can't wait to see you again. My vision blurred. Amazing. Last night. I slammed her phone down and took a deep breath, my chest heaving as I tried to process what I'd just read. She'd lied to my face. There wasn't a group dinner with coworkers. It was just her and Neil. And whatever amazing thing they did wasn't something she was willing to admit to me. When Jolene came home later that day, I acted like nothing had changed. I smiled, kissed her on the forehead, and even helped her unpack the groceries. But beneath the surface, my mind was racing. Every laugh, every glance, every word she said felt like a dagger. She had no idea I knew, and that ignorance was the only weapon I had to keep her from realizing I was planning my next move. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay there, staring at the ceiling, replaying every conversation we'd had over the past month. The little things I'd dismissed. Her sudden interest in me time, the late-night texts, the faint smell of cologne on her jacket that wasn't mine. It all clicked now. I wanted answers, but I wasn't going to confront her until I had proof, cold, undeniable proof. So I did what I never thought I'd do. I hired a private investigator. His name was Dale, a grizzled guy in his early 50s with the kind of face that said he'd seen it all. I explained my suspicions to him over the phone, leaving out the more personal details. He didn't ask many questions, just gave me a flat fee and promised to be discreet. The following week was a blur of paranoia and waiting. Jolene's behavior didn't change much, but now I noticed every little detail. How she'd take extra time getting ready for work, how she'd smile at her phone more often than usual, and how she seemed lighter, like a weight had been lifted off her shoulders. Except that weight was me. Dale called me on a Thursday afternoon. "We need to meet," he said, his voice low and serious. "I've got something you'll want to see." I met Dale that same evening in a small diner on the edge of town. The place was practically empty, the kind of spot where people didn't ask questions. Dale was already seated in a booth when I walked in, a manila envelope sitting on the table in front of him. His expression was unreadable, but his eyes told me everything I needed to know. This wasn't going to be easy. "Conrad," he said, gesturing for me to sit. "Before we start, you need to prepare yourself. What I'm about to show you, it's bad." My heart was pounding so hard I could barely hear him over the blood rushing in my ears. "Just show me," I said, my voice firmer than I felt. Dale slid the envelope across the table. I hesitated for a moment before opening it, my fingers trembling as I pulled out a stack of photos. The first one hit me like a freight train. Jolene, sitting in a dimly lit bar, her hand resting on Neil's thigh. Her smile was radiant, the kind of smile I hadn't seen directed at me in months. The next photo was worse. Neil and Jolene were in the parking lot, leaning against his car. His hands were on her waist, pulling her close as they kissed. It wasn't just a casual peck. It was the kind of kiss that screamed passion. The kind of kiss that belonged to someone who wasn't afraid of getting caught. I flipped through the rest of the photos in a daze. There was no ambiguity here, no room for misinterpretation. She wasn't just meeting a coworker for drinks. She was betraying me in every way imaginable. She's been seeing him for at least 3 weeks, Dale said, his voice cutting through my fog of disbelief. Dinner dates, late-night meetups, even some extended lunch breaks. It's all here. I stared at the evidence, my chest tightening with every second. Did they? I couldn't bring myself to finish the question. Dale nodded grimly. They've spent time in a hotel. I didn't go inside. But I've seen this enough to know what's going on. I wanted to scream, to flip the table, to punch something, anything. But all I could do was sit there, frozen in a mix of rage and heartbreak. The woman I'd loved, the woman I'd trusted with my entire life, had thrown it all away. For him. What now? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. That's up to you, Dale said. But if you want my advice, don't confront her until you've got a plan. You're in a position of power right now. Don't give that up. I nodded, slipping the photos back into the envelope. I paid Dale, thanked him, and left the diner without another word. As I drove home, the weight of what I'd just seen settled over me like a dark cloud. But beneath the pain, a spark of determination began to grow. Dale was right. I needed a plan. When I got home, Jolene was already in bed, her face lit up by the soft glow of her phone. She looked up as I walked in, giving me that same fake smile she'd been using lately. "Hey, how was your evening?" she asked casually, as if nothing was out of the ordinary. "It was fine," I replied, forcing a smile. "Just catching up with an old friend." She didn't ask any more questions, and I didn't offer any details. Instead, I went to the kitchen, grabbed a glass of water, and sat at the dining table, staring at the manila envelope in my hands. The weight of it felt unbearable, but it also gave me clarity. Jolene had made her choices, and now it was my turn. Over the next few days, I began putting my plan into motion. I called a lawyer, explained my situation, and started drafting the divorce papers. I didn't tell Jolene a thing. If she wanted to play games, I'd let her think she was winning, right up until the moment she wasn't. By the time the following weekend rolled around, everything was ready. The papers were signed, the locks on the house were changed, and her bags were packed. All I had to do was wait for her next fun date. When Saturday evening came, Jolene was practically glowing as she got ready to go out. She wore a red dress I hadn't seen in years, her hair and makeup done to perfection. "Don't wait up," she said with a wink as she grabbed her purse and headed out the door. I waited until I heard her car pull away before setting everything up. The divorce papers went on the dining table, right next to the manila envelope. Her packed suitcases were placed neatly by the front door. I even left a little note. I hope Neil was worth it. Then I sat down and waited. Jolene returned home late that night, much later than usual. It was nearly 1 a.m. when I heard her car pull into the driveway. I stayed seated in the living room, the soft glow of the table lamp illuminating the scene I had carefully set up for her. My heart was pounding, but not with sadness this time. This was pure resolve. When she opened the door, I could hear her humming softly, likely still caught up in whatever fantasy she'd been living out with Neil. She didn't notice me at first, Her heels clicked against the hardwood floor as she walked toward the kitchen, her phone lighting up in her hand. But the moment she saw the suitcases by the door, she froze. "What's this?" she called out, her voice tinged with confusion. She turned around, her eyes scanning the room, until they landed on me. I was sitting on the couch, calm and collected, the manila envelope resting on the coffee table in front of me. "Welcome home, Jolene," I said, my voice steady. "We need to talk." Her confusion quickly turned into irritation. "Conrad, what's going on? Why are my bags packed?" I leaned forward, picking up the envelope and holding it out to her. "Because you're not staying here anymore." She didn't take the envelope. Instead, she crossed her arms and gave me a defiant look. "What the hell are you talking about?" I didn't answer right away. I opened the envelope, pulled out one of the photos, and placed it on the table where she could see it. It was the one of her and Neil in the parking lot, their lips locked in a passionate kiss. Her face went pale. "Care to explain this?" I asked, my voice calm but cold. Jolene's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. It's not what it looks like." I couldn't help but laugh at the absurdity of her response. "Not what it looks like. So you weren't kissing Neil in a parking lot while I was sitting at home, trusting you?" Her hands were shaking now, but she tried to regain her composure. "Conrad, listen. It was just one time. It didn't mean anything. I was just—" "Stop," I said sharply, cutting her off. "Don't insult my intelligence. I have more than just this one photo, Jolene. I know about the dinners, the hotel rooms, all of it." Her eyes filled with tears, but I didn't feel sorry for her. Not anymore. She looked at the suitcases again, then back at me. "Conrad, please. We can work through this. I made a mistake, but it doesn't have to end like this." I stood up, towering over her. "No, Jolene. You made the decision to end this marriage the moment you decided I wasn't enough for you. I've spent the last 7 years giving you everything I had, and you threw it away for some cheap thrill." She reached out to grab my arm, but I stepped back. "Conrad, I love you. I do. Neil doesn't mean anything to me." "Love?" I scoffed, shaking my head. "You don't betray someone you love. You don't sneak around and lie to their face. You made your choice, Jolene, and now you're going to live with the consequences." I grabbed the divorce papers from the table and handed them to her. "These are already signed. All you have to do is add your signature. Once that's done, you can take your bags and go." Her tears turned into full-blown sobs. "Conrad, please don't do this. I'll never see Neil again. I'll do anything to fix this." But her words meant nothing to me anymore. I had seen the truth in those photos, felt the weight of her betrayal in every lie she'd told over the past few weeks. There was no coming back from this. "You should have thought about that before you decided Neil was worth more than your marriage," I said, my voice like steel. "Now, if you'll excuse me, I'd like you to leave. You can stay with Neil or whoever else you think will take you in." Jolene sank to her knees, clutching the divorce papers as though they were a death sentence. But I didn't feel sorry for her. She had made her bed, and now she had to lie in it. Just not in my house. I walked upstairs and closed the bedroom door behind me, leaving her alone to pack up the remnants of her shattered life. For the first time in weeks, I felt a strange sense of peace. It wasn't happiness, not yet, but it was the start of something better. When I woke up the next morning, the house was silent. Too silent. I glanced at the clock on my nightstand. 7:15 a.m. Normally, Jolene would have been in the kitchen, the smell of coffee filling the air as she pretended everything was fine. But not today. I threw on a shirt and headed downstairs. The first thing I noticed was the divorce papers on the dining table. She hadn't signed them. Instead, there was a handwritten note resting on top of them. My heart skipped a beat as I picked it up, her familiar handwriting staring back at me. Conrad, I don't even know what to say. I know I hurt you, and I know I don't deserve your forgiveness. I didn't sign the papers because I still hope there's a chance we can work this out. I'll be staying with a friend for now. Please call me when you're ready to talk. Jolene. I crumpled the note in my hand, the words, "work this out," echoing in my mind like a cruel joke. After everything she'd done, she still thought there was a chance. It was almost laughable. Almost. Her suitcases were gone, along with her car. I felt a pang of emptiness as I stood in the middle of the living room, the reality of her absence sinking in. This was what I wanted, wasn't it? To take back control of my life, to be free of her lies. So why did it feel like the air had been sucked out of the room? Max, our rescue dog, padded over to me, his tail wagging hesitantly as if he could sense the tension. I knelt down and scratched behind his ears, grateful for the comfort of his quiet companionship. "It's just us now, buddy," I muttered. "We'll figure this out." The next few days were a strange mix of relief and anger. On one hand, the house felt lighter without Jolene's presence, like the tension had been physically lifted. On the other hand, the silence was deafening. I couldn't stop replaying her betrayal in my head, every moment of it, like a fresh wound. I focused on work during the day, throwing myself into projects to keep my mind occupied. But the nights were harder. I'd sit in the living room, staring at the empty spot on the couch where Jolene used to sit, her laughter echoing in my memory like a ghost. Max would curl up next to me, his soft snores the only sound in the house. I avoided her calls and texts, letting them pile up on my phone like unanswered questions. She sent messages almost every day, each one more desperate than the last. "Conrad, please talk to me. I'm sorry. Can we at least meet and talk about this? I miss you. I miss us." But I couldn't bring myself to respond. What was there to say? That I didn't trust her anymore? That every time I closed my eyes, I saw her in that parking lot with Neil? That I couldn't stop wondering how long she'd been lying to me? One evening, about a week after she left, I got a call from an unknown number. At first, I thought it was one of those spam calls, but something made me answer. "Hello? Conrad. This is Neil." My blood turned to ice at the sound of his voice. "What the hell do you want?" I snapped. There was a pause on the other end, and then he sighed. "Look, I know I'm probably the last person you want to hear from, but I need to talk to you. It's important." I almost hung up right then and there, but something about the way he said it stopped me. "You've got 2 minutes," I said through gritted teeth. "I just wanted to say, I didn't know she was married at first," Neil began. "She didn't tell me until after we'd already, I'm not trying to make excuses, but I thought you should know." My grip tightened on the phone. Is that supposed to make me feel better? That you were too stupid to realize she was lying to you too? "Look, man, I'm sorry. I really am," he said, his voice pleading. "But there's more to this than you know. Jolene's been telling me some things about your marriage, about you, and I thought you deserved to hear it." I clenched my jaw, my heart pounding. What exactly has she been saying? There was another pause, and then Neil's voice dropped to almost a whisper. She said you've been neglecting her, that you've been distant and cold. She made it sound like she didn't have a choice but to look elsewhere. The words hit me like a gut punch. I wanted to scream, to argue, to tell him he didn't know the first thing about my marriage. But part of me couldn't help but wonder, was that how she saw me? Was that how she justified what she'd done? Listen, Neil, I said finally, my voice low and dangerous. You can believe whatever lies she's feeding you, but don't you dare call me again. You made your bed, and now you can deal with the fallout. I hung up before he could respond, my hands shaking as I tossed the phone onto the couch. Neil's words echoed in my mind, stirring up a storm of doubt and anger. But I knew one thing for sure. Whatever Jolene had told him, it didn't change the fact that she had betrayed me, and no amount of excuses or justifications would ever make that okay. After that call with Neil, I couldn't stop replaying everything in my head. The lies Jolene had told him, the excuses she'd made. It all felt like a new betrayal, on top of the one I was already dealing with. If she was willing to rewrite our entire marriage just to justify her actions, then I had no reason to believe anything she said anymore. She texted me the next day, as if nothing had happened. Can we please talk? I know I hurt you, but we can fix this. I stared at the message for what felt like hours. Fix this? She thought we could just patch things up and go back to normal? The audacity of it made my blood boil. I decided I'd had enough. It was time to put an end to this, once and for all. I texted her back for the first time since she left. We need to meet. Tonight. Come to the house. Her reply came almost instantly. I'll be there. That evening, I made sure everything was ready. The divorce papers were back on the table, and I'd printed out every damning photo from the investigator. This time, there would be no tears, no excuses. I was done giving her the benefit of the doubt. When Jolene arrived, she looked hopeful, even relieved. Conrad, I'm so glad you texted, she said as she stepped inside. I didn't waste time with pleasantries. I pointed to the table. Sit down. Her smile faltered, but she obeyed. I could see the tension in her shoulders as she glanced at the papers and photos. What is this? She asked, though the fear in her voice told me she already knew. This, I said, sitting across from her, is the truth. No more lies. No more excuses. I'm giving you one last chance to tell me everything. If you lie to me again, you'll regret it. She hesitated, her eyes darting between the papers and me. Conrad, Start talking, I interrupted. Why Neil? How long? And why the hell did you think I wouldn't find out? Jolene sat frozen, her hands trembling as she reached for the photos. She flipped through them slowly, her face growing paler with each one. By the time she reached the last photo, she couldn't meet my eyes. I never meant for it to go this far, she said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. It was just supposed to be fun. Fun? I repeated, my voice laced with disbelief. You destroyed our marriage for fun? Tears welled up in her eyes, but I didn't feel sympathy. It wasn't like that, Conrad. I didn't plan this. Neil and I just started talking at work. He was attentive, and I guess I got caught up in the attention. Attention? I leaned forward, my hands gripping the edge of the table. So what? I wasn't enough for you? Is that what you're saying? She shook her head, the tears spilling over now. You've always been enough. But lately, things felt different. You seemed distant, like you weren't really here. And Neil made me feel... Don't, I snapped, cutting her off. Don't you dare sit there and blame me for your choices. I gave you everything, Jolene. My trust, my love, my life. And this is how you repay me. Her tears turned into sobs, but I didn't let up. How long has it been going on? I demanded. 2 months, she admitted, her voice shaking. It was just dinners at first, I swear, Conrad. But then it became more. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. 2 months. For 2 months, she had been lying to my face, sneaking around, and letting me believe everything was fine. And all for what? A cheap thrill with some guy from her office. I stood up, pacing the room as the anger boiled over. You could have told me you were unhappy. You could have talked to me, Jolene. But instead, you chose to betray me. Do you have any idea what you've done? She buried her face in her hands, her sobs muffled. I didn't mean to hurt you, she cried. I was stupid, okay? I was selfish, and I know I don't deserve your forgiveness. You're damn right you don't, I said, my voice cold. And you're not getting it. I pointed to the divorce papers on the table. Sign them, Jolene. Right here, right now. This marriage is over. Jolene's sobs filled the room, but I felt nothing. No pity, no sadness. Just a hollow emptiness where my love for her used to be. She reached for the papers with shaking hands, her fingers hovering over the pen. Conrad, please, she whispered. Are you sure this is what you want? I let out a bitter laugh. What I want is a wife who doesn't lie to my face while sneaking around with another man. But since that's not possible, yes, I'm damn sure. Her breath hitched, and for a moment, she just sat there, staring at the papers like they were a death sentence. Then, slowly, she picked up the pen. Her signature came out shaky, hesitant, like she still thought she could change my mind. But it was done. The moment the ink dried, she wasn't my wife anymore. She wiped her tears away and looked up at me. I never stopped loving you, she choked out. I stared at her for a long moment, then shook my head. You don't betray the people you love, Jolene. You just don't. Her lip trembled, but she didn't argue. There was nothing left to say. I grabbed the papers, folded them neatly, and set them aside. Then I stood up and walked to the door, opening it wide. Your bags are packed. Your car is outside. It's time to go. Jolene hesitated. Can we? No. Her shoulders slumped, and with a deep, shuddering breath, she picked up her suitcase. She walked toward the door, pausing just before stepping outside. I could feel the weight of her gaze on me, waiting for something. One last chance, one final moment of weakness. But I didn't give it to her. Without another word, I shut the door behind her. The silence that followed was deafening. For the first time in 7 years, I was alone.